We want to concentrate today on the importance of stable funding for Canada's national broadcaster. It's very important that we see in this country the support for national broadcasting, particularly through our public broadcasters, CBC and Radio-Canada. We've seen over the years very deep cuts to our public broadcaster, particularly through the 1990s when a third of the budget of CBC and Radio-Canada was cut. We've seen across the country a trend in corporate concentration in the private sector broadcasters, which is also worrying. I devoted a chapter in my last book to the question of the health of our media in Canada as a matter of democracy, and noted the findings in 1981 from the Kent Commission, in which the chair of a Royal Commission on newspaper ownership described corporate concentration of ownership in the English and French media as quote-unquote monstrous. What Peter Kent said then, 3 decades ago, is where we are is, in the Commission's opinion, entirely unacceptable for a democratic society. Too much power is put in too few hands, and it is power without accountability. I think the question of media concentration of ownership, which is, of course, Tom Kent's, not Peter Kent, not our Environment Minister, Tom Kent's comments back in 1981 as Royal Commissioner on Media Ownership, was dealing with a situation that predates Conrad Black's accumulation of an empire, the creation of the major news chains that we now have, which are vertically integrated, which involve television, radio, and newspapers concentrated in a handful of corporate hands that then make a number of the decisions, such as the debates, but others as well. So in looking at the health of a democracy, the health of our media also matters. And we are committing today that when you see our full budget and our platform, which will be released on Thursday, that there's $450 million set aside for the CBC as we go forward in our budget and our platform. And we will also be speaking to the need to diversify the voices in our public media. On ne doit pas aller aux questions, les enjeux très importants pour la démocratie au Canada. C'est les questions de médias, les questions de le pouvoir de le radiodiffuseur national, de créer pour tout le monde les histoires locales, tous les enjeux locaux. Nous avons beaucoup de coupures dans les budgets pour la Radio-Canada et le CBC. Et à ce moment, nous avons un système plus faible pour un radiodiffuseur national. Pour ça, c'est très important de parler de ces enjeux. Je pense que sans mon voix dans les débats, peut-être il n'y a personne qui va parler de ces questions très importantes pour les démocraties, les médias indépendants. Et maintenant, nous avons une question sérieuse de la mainmise des grandes sociétés sur le contenu médiatique dans très petites mains. Maintenant, nous avons, comme Tom Kent a dit, c'est très longtemps dans la Commission royale sur les questions des quotidiens, les journaux au Canada. Il a dit qu'il y a trop de pouvoir dans moins de mains. Et c'est la même chose maintenant, mais c'est pire. Nous avons un problème sérieux avec les médias, mais pour faire une différence, c'est nécessaire d'avoir un engagement sérieux pour l'appui pour Radio-Canada et pour le CBC. Et aujourd'hui, le Parti vert annonce notre engagement pour 450 millions de dollars pour notre système radiodiffuseur national, pour donner pour tout le monde au Canada les nouvelles relevantes, importantes pour une population engagée dans une démocratie. This is one of those issues that nobody wants to touch, because I think it was Paul Martin said once that a politician complaining about the media is like a sailor complaining about the sea. You've got a real problem when you want to raise these issues. But as I said, I wrote a chapter about democracy in the media in my last book, because it's how do Canadians engage with political leaders? How do they engage with issues? Everything tends to be mediated through, no pun intended, the fifth estate. The role of journalism and the media in a democracy is critical. And it's a hard thing to point out in an election campaign that we've got a problem. And part of it that can be addressed is to redress the serious cuts that really great NGOs like Friends of Canadian Broadcasting have been raising. We need to provide stable funding for the CBC. I said it in an article right before the budget in an outlet called iPolitics. They asked me, what are the very short list, 5 things you want to see in that budget? And one of them was stable funding for the CBC. Because in a healthy democracy, when you lose that voice that's a public broadcaster that doesn't feel beholden to political interests, you're in even more trouble when you also put that picture on overlay of a handful of corporations that control almost all. And I say almost because we know we've got independent television, we've got Czech TV, we know we've got some independent media, we've got Island Tides, and we know that Victoria Times Colonist has an excellent editor who sometimes veers editorial policy away from post-media national editorial stances. But overall, concentration of ownership in Canadian media is a threat to democracy.